Well, it was a Sunday, and we went to church, and Jarod had gone to the art class that morning. And at the art class, they had made stepping stones out of plaster of Paris and the decorative marbles. I saw the project, but I did not know that on the way home it had broken.
I was in the kitchen, I believe, and Jarod ran in holding his throat, and he was kind of freaking out. He told me he'd swallowed a marble, and I asked him, well, what kind of marble was it? And he told me, and I remembered seeing it in the car, so I knew from the beginning that it was big. It was probably the size of a quarter, kind of flat, and so I tried to get him calmed down, and we tried to figure out if this was something that was going to pass or that we needed to go take care of. An hour and a half later, he started spitting up a little bit, so we knew that the marble was stuck there.
He would not swallow his saliva, not because it hurt, but because it wasn't going down. It wouldn't go down anymore. So I said, well, let's go to the ER. They did x-rays, and the doctor came back by and he said, I found it, here it is, and he showed it to me, and when we saw how big it was, we both just kind of gasped. And so he said, I'm gonna admit you, and if it doesn't pass by morning, we're gonna have to go get it out. So they took him in. Dr. King did surgery on him. He said if he would eat and drink by the next morning, we could go home. And the next morning, he still was not eating or drinking. It hurt a lot worse than it had.
Tuesday morning, they took him down and did an x-ray test with some contrast, and it showed a tear in his esophagus. And we knew at that point that it got real complicated real fast.
He went in, and it seemed like a whole day before he came back to the room, because they just sent us to the room to wait for him. And it was a solid hour and a half to 2 hours before he came back from surgery. And when he returned, he didn't look like Jarod. He didn't look like my baby, because he was so drugged still. But I knew he was going to be okay, because Dr. King came in immediately following. And he explained everything that had happened and everything he found.
They were pretty straightforward with us. They told us, look, he's got a tear in his esophagus. He's got an infection in his neck. He's got a drain tube to drain the infection out. He's got a NG tube to feed, because he's not going to be able to take anything by mouth for quite a while. And we didn't know how long it was going to take. We didn't know if it was a week, a month. I mean, we didn't know.
By about day 3 or 4, he was sitting up more and feeling a little bit better. The fever had gone, and you could tell that the drugs were kicked in and working really good.
As we waited and waited and just to see how things go, we kind of worked in shifts. I mean, we have another child that was still in school, so kind of our routine was that Mom would spend the night, and I would take the older boy home, and I'd take him to school, and then I'd come up to the hospital, and she would go home and take a shower and take care of getting the lesson plans for the next day. Every nurse we had was great. They were kind, caring, compassionate, but skilled also. They knew what they were doing, and you could really tell. Everyone
there was so positive and so upbeat, and just constantly trying to find ways to make his stay and all of our stay better.
Throughout the whole thing, Jarod was a brave little fella. He's a smart kid. He knew what was going on. He understood way more than I ever thought he would. He could tell you why he was there. He could tell you what was wrong with him. He could tell you what his treatment was. He could tell you kind of how long it was going to take. He knew the purpose of everything, and it was amazing to me, because he didn't get that from us. He got that from the education that the people were giving him as they were taking care of him.
Our stay at Hendrick Children's Hospital was phenomenal.
I mean, there's nothing good about your child being in the hospital for that long, but just the huge amount of support we had from our friends and family, and just the quality of care, both of those things. For being terrible, it wasn't that bad. I'm glad to tell anybody that I can tell that we have good care right here. We don't have to go somewhere else.